Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey, guys, it's me, John Davis, and I am here with Spirit Cafe. It is a lovely and beautiful day here. We had 70s here yesterday in Ohio. And today we're having 40s today in Ohio because that's the way it works in Ohio. And today I am here, of course, with the lovely, the powerful, the dynamic, the smiley, the bright and white Tamara Zoner. Good morning, Tamara Zoner. How are you this morning?
Good morning, John. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm not sure that you can that our viewers can actually see me right now. So I am throwing us over to gallery view because it works better in gallery view for some reason. So, and I will play with this setting to figure out what the heck's going on with that. Why we've had 2 episodes with technical difficulties, which have, so we have 2 episodes out on our queue that have no video. So, which is, as my grandmother would say, that sucks. So,
very articulate.
So are you well in Michigan, or is everything great out there in Michigan?
I mean, it's a pretty gray day here, but yesterday was lovely. We didn't get into the 70s, but it was in the 60s and it was very windy and I didn't even care. I sat on my deck and had coffee and enjoyed my very first time in the new house having coffee on the deck.
Oh, lovely.
And yeah, it was great.
That's lovely. So today I thought we'd do something interesting. I thought we'd talk about something we have never really talked about before. And it is, we talk about it, but we kind of skirt around it. The concept of the difference between spirituality and religion. And let me jump over to my other camera here real quick. So this is going to be an interesting little new feature for our show today. If I can find it here. Hold on. There you go. Okay. So religion and spirituality. So what is religion? Religion,
fancy.
A personalized set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. What is spirituality? Spirituality, the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. So we have 2 very different definitions here. And in the being very different, it's interesting to me because when I look at the definition of religion, the one thing that hits me is that is a definition of dogma. That is an absolute definition of dogma. And spirituality, when I read it, is an internal journey. So it's like outer practices versus internal journey. And I think that that's where a lot of people struggle when they talk about spirituality is they conflate the 2 of them. One is an external journey, one is an internal journey. And I think that one is meant to be an internal journey, but they don't lead you there very well. So what's your thought on this?
I like how you said, but they don't lead you there very well, because as you were talking about the different definitions, I was thinking of my own experience growing up in the Catholic Church. And although they would say God is within and around you, they also made it clear that you can get to him yourself. You had to come to church. You had to speak to a priest. You had to do these certain things and behave this certain way. And I guess I have a rebel heart.
Not you.
It never made sense to me. And it confused me, in fact. And lots of things about the Catholic Church confused me. And so I like this. I like the internal relationship and the internal exploration. And I remember saying to my mom once, who was very distraught over me not going to church anymore and not practicing Catholicism. And I just said, hey, Mom, like, I appreciate your thoughts. And I don't feel like I need a middleman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like church is a middleman, and I'm going direct to the source, literally.
Right. Right. When in one of my regression memories, Jeshua said, when you seek a path will be laid before you, but until you turn the path to yourself, you'll never find the doorway. And I think that's really the key is that religions become the path rather than the actual doorway.
Mm.
It needs to become the doorway because that is where our connection to source is. But I also think that as an internal journey, we get lost in the words, and we get lost in the songs, and we get lost in all the dogmatic ceremonies and rituals to the point where we forget that the connection to source is not a thinking, it's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to get back into what we feel about things, and feeling the truth of things and feeling the love of things. And I think in many ways, because the dogma of religion has become so rote and so habitual that we forget the connection. And it was originally set to be a connection. It was set to be a place of real deep introspection and following. But what it eventually became was a following rather than a acknowledging or exploring. And now we're, yeah. And my mother was, as my mom was a saint. I talk about my mom all the time. She's a saint, right? And I asked her one day why she became so Catholic. And she said, because I had an out-of-body experience during a mass. And so to her, it was an internal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was very deeply into that external. So for her Catholicism was very much a internal as well as external thing. And being head of liturgical doctrine, she was an expert on all the external stuff. But she lived it in practice on the internal.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I think people in religion can have a beautiful and loving and wonderful experience in religion, as long as they don't forget that it's an internal journey and not an external, rote, habitual response.
Yes. So I think too that rituals, there are some beautiful rituals in various religions that can help us connect in or prepare ourselves to communicate with God or source or the yada yada. And it's when the rituals become routine that we lose that connection. So if I, in my morning ritual, light a candle, burn some incense to cleanse the space, to welcome my connection to source, and then take time to pray or meditate, that's a beautiful ritual that's actually moving closer to all that is. And if I practice it so often, or I have to go to it, like I could only practice in one room of my house, that's the only place where I could light that incense or light that candle, or I have to have those in order to feel that connection, then I've lost the connection. So if we're depending on the external to create a relationship with our own spirituality, that's religion to me.
Right. I completely agree with you. And you can create your own religion. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that I have with a lot of the new age dogma that's out there. And there's a lot of it. They're in the 1830s, Minister Darby invented the rapture. But right now, new age people are inventing this new 5D ascension thing, and they're creating all of this, the ascension event that's coming and all this stuff. It's all external dogmatic stuff that they're wrapping around something so very simple. My ritual in the morning is I get up and I immediately drink some water because I'm still on a water fast, 49 pounds down. Thank you very much.
Wow.
But I go into my room. I have a meditation room, which is my place.
Mm-hmm.
And my habit is to go to that room and I sit down and I just sit in love for 40 minutes. And I just sit in that feeling, right? Because it's not a thinking, it's feeling. So I just go in there and release everything and let the physical world go, let the traditions go, let the the definitions of myself go, and I just sit in that love. But what I find really fascinating is that room may be my ritual, that time of the day may be my ritual, but when I go to the grocery store, I do the same thing. As I walk into the grocery store, I release the physical definitions of myself, and I just sit in that love as I walk through the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I watch people smile around me, and I watch people spark up conversations with me and laugh and joke around me, because I'm bringing, it's like Tamara Zoner walking into a room and changing it and having all these people smile and laugh and be engaged. That's what we're supposed to do.
That's spirituality. Like, you're engaging spirit in those moments and in all of your moments. And it's the thing about religion is that a lot of religious people are religious on Sundays at church, and then they don't carry that through their lives. I mean, we've seen it so much, especially in politics in the last several years. You see these Christian, God-fearing people or God-loving people who are religious on Sundays, and they might be religious on Tuesdays as well, but they're not carrying that love, that God love, that source through to every experience in their lives. So they don't act in a spiritual, loving way.
Right. In fact, what I find really interesting is they tend to act in a judgmental way. They tend to say, well, our religion is right, our spiritual practice is right, our rules are right, and I think that that's such a detrimental thing to spirituality, because when the Dalai Lama says my religion is simple, my religion is kindness, I think that that's very spiritual.
It
because
is.
kindness is spiritual, right? But when I hear a priest say, I'd like to offer you all practicing Catholics communion, and I wish I could offer you all communion, but until you become a practicing Catholic, I can't. I don't think that's spiritual. I think that's partisan. I think that's, we are here, we are right and you are wrong. And, I have known many people who are beautiful, loving people that are deep into their religion. But I've also known people who I thought were that way. And then when I had my reincarnation experience, completely stopped speaking with me.
Wow.
Completely disregarded me because now I was doing the devil's work or Satan's work or something of that nature. And I'm like, in reality, the only reason you're reacting that way is because you want to be right. And that means you want your dogma to be right. You want your spirituality, not your spirituality, your religion to be right. But, I only speak love. And so what that is the spiritual path in my mind, and I think it's interesting that the ones who are most vehement are the ones who claim to be Christian.
Yes.
And God is love, and Jesus left one commandment: love one another, and
Right.
And,
not only love the ones who are in your same religion.
right. That kind of goes against the whole principle, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Do you think, John, that there's a possibility that maybe 1,000 years from now, because I don't think it'll happen in the next 100, do you think religion could open to being a safe place for everyone where love is the main theme, and they say, hey, here's how we practice, and as long as it leads to God, your practice is also beautiful and accepted?
I like your premise. However, I'm going to make you happier. I already see it happening.
Okay.
I already see it happening. When I spoke at Unity churches, and what are Unity churches? Unity churches are Christian based, but open to all, right? I spoke at Unity churches about my reincarnation experience, and the local Unity church here had Buddhist monks come in and do a mandala, and it was like incredible, what they're doing. what I also find is that a lot of metaphysical / holistic centers that I've spoken at around the country were in church buildings. And the reason they were in church buildings is because the church were trying to keep their doors opening by renting the space because their parishioners were going away.
Right.
People were starting to say, no, that really doesn't feel right to me. And we're really getting into a much more feeling space right now. And what's interesting is the holistic and metaphysical centers that I would speak at, all of them end up moving out of the churches and moving into bigger buildings because they need more space for more people coming to them, right? Yes. And what was really fascinating was in several of the churches, the reason why they left the churches is because the parishioners started graffitiing their walls and started saying, "You Satan worshipers," and all this stuff, and literally doing very vehement attacks on them.
Wow.
Whereas what they were talking about upstairs was love and care and compassion and meditation and internal journey, and it's kind of like that the dogma below is falling away. And I say below because the one metaphysical center that I liked so much was the church had rented them out the choir loft.
Okay.
And the choir loft had become the metaphysical center. And so down below literally was the parishioners, right? So it was like those people down there and those people up there. And it was very, very appropriate in my mind because these people were up here were raising their consciousness and these people down here were lost in their dogma. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting watching the dogmatic people go away. So I totally see it. And especially, as you know, Tamara, I spoke all over the country about 15 years ago, and it was very different. The people back then were not in any way, shape, or form ready for an awakening. And now, holy smokes, everybody's awakening. Everyone's talking about their internal journey and going to that space within. And I think that it's not going to be 1,000 years, not going to be 100 years. I think it's happening right now.
That's beautiful. I think too, that's why, my own meetup continues to grow because and I have some people who practice a religion and go to church that come to my meetups, but it's like this sacred spiritual space. We're not talking about spirituality necessarily. And yet, you can feel spirit because that love is there. It's this place where we come together in community or communion. Right. We don't take communion. We don't make communion, but we have communion. And everyone gets to show up just as they are and be witnessed and be loved and be seen and be heard. And this is what I think church is supposed to feel like.
Right. Exactly. It's supposed to, and one of the questions that I often get on my channel is, but where do I find a community? And I'm like, create one, start one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you can't find, that's what I've always done. If I can't find it, I make it.
Right. Yeah. Just step up and create a meetup group, right? Create, start online, start doing something online and then saying, hey, let's get coffee.
Exactly.
Create
that's
your
exactly
community.
what I did.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can create community anywhere,
Yes.
Your meetup group sometimes is in a park, right?
Sometimes in a park, sometimes in a seasonal greenhouse that's empty. Sometimes, pre-COVID, in a coffee shop or a restaurant. And It can be anywhere and it doesn't matter. What matters is our intention, to come together, to be vulnerable and to embrace the vulnerability of others and to simply open our minds and expand our hearts. That's it.
Exactly. The other thing that another kind of avenue I want to go down is this idea of life itself is a spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. We are here to experience this world and here experience our life. And I really truly feel like we're away when we're here. Mm-hmm. And and I said to somebody the other day, I said, imagine it's like deep sea diving. Right. You jump into your suit, you go way down in the water and you experience the bottom of the water. Right. And then every so often you have to come back up for air. right? You have to come back to the surface. Now, that happens every day after we're awake for, 16 hours or so. We have to go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually going back to source every day, and while we're here and we're experiencing, this is a great adventure. You go out and seize the adventure and live the adventure and share the adventure and experience the life that we all can experience. And the other part is bring that feeling of the other side here.
Mm-hmm.
Bring, as they would say in the Bible, bringing heaven to earth.
Yeah.
Bring heaven to earth. Bring that feeling, that loving, that joy, that compassion here, in our world. And it's so fascinating. In my live stream yesterday, I talked about Ukrainian mothers right now. There's a whole thing. A series of Ukrainian mothers are helping Russian soldiers who have been captured, right? And they're distraught because they were told that they weren't going to a war; they were going to a military exercise. And these soldiers suddenly found themselves being shot at and blown up, and these soldiers were distraught. Well, these Ukrainian mothers have been helping these Russian soldiers connect with their mothers in Russia, and helping their mothers come get them.
Wow.
Right. So they've had this huge connection, and that's so loving. That's so caring. These guys came to their country and have been wreaking all this damage, and yet they're a human person and they don't realize what they're doing. And as a loving mother, I'm going to make sure another mother has her son back.
I love that so much. That is
beautiful.
That is love. That is God's presence within them. That's what I think. That's beautiful.
That's spirituality at work.
Yeah.
That's that internal journey of self. I could easily get into the idea of you people did this to me, which is what religion does. You people don't believe what I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And instead it goes, I am going to do the loving thing for not only this person who's hurting in front of me, but for the mother who's also hurting. And I'm going to solve that situation. I think it's one of the most beautiful stories I've heard in a long time.
Me too. It's so beautiful. And it's really a beautiful demonstration of oneness, of them knowing that we are all connected, that we're all the same. And I think that in spirituality, that's a real focus where we are one, we are all connected. And in religion, there's very much separation.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And it's interesting is the more that one religion starts to subjugate another, it just creates more and more fear-based response, which creates more and more anger and violence. It's like, okay. On my YouTube channel, I get comments all the time from people who are very deep in their religion. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I say to them before I say anything else is I respect your beliefs. I mean, it's the first thing I say, because it's not for me or anybody else to tell them their journey. Right. It's for us to love. That's our job. That's the spiritual journey. It's for us to love them no matter who they are, no matter where they are. I always go back to Saint Joan, also known as my mom, when she said spirituality is a personal journey.
Yeah.
And that's just it. We have to realize that spirituality is a personal journey. It's a personal internal journey. And they may be going through a religious journey in their personal journey. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that right now they will find their way back to a loving space. I remember my grandmother, Nana, we called her. When she grew up, she was actually born the day the Wright brothers first flew.
Oh, cool.
1903. And she used to always joke how she was going to live to be 150 and marry the man in the moon. And and she wanted to see where air travel went in 150 years. But back in those days, things were very prim and proper, and you don't, premarital sex was not even thought of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll remember as she got older, she got more and more liberal in her thinking. And she said to my sister one day, she says, "You're not waiting till marriage, are you?" And my sister said, "No." She says, "Good." Right. And I was like, "Yeah, go, Nana." Right. Somebody asked me on my channel the other day about marriage and all that stuff. I'm like, love in any form is never wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And marriage is a religious institution.
Yes.
And there's no need to ever get married. And then I gave the example of Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn.
Mm-hmm.
That is a beautiful, loving relationship. They've never gotten married.
Right.
They just never did, and they're fine. And, Kate Hudson thinks of Kurt as her father. And, it's just a beautiful situation. But it comes down to love overall. And to me, that's where spirituality and religion kind of fall apart, is because spirituality is about that loving vibration,
Yes.
that internal journey with the love. And religion is all about, you have to love the way I think you should love.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
nice distinction. And you have to do these things this certain way. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we don't love you.
Yeah. Oh, right. And when I was an altar boy, I mean, I got trained on how to make the ching on the incense burner. Think about that. There's a specific way you had to swing this so it would go ching, 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 ching. That was the rule. You had to make the thing ching. Why?
Their purpose.
Now, it was cool. I liked the ching. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was a cool ching, but but why? What's the reasoning?
Yeah.
In the book that I'm writing right now, I have a chapter called "I Puked on the Altar," and I tell this huge story about how I was feeling ill while being an altar boy.
Story. It's a good story.
Yeah. And I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but let me just tie the one thing together. At the end of that chapter, it says that while I was on the altar being ill, some woman got up in the congregation, went up to my brother and said, "That young boy doesn't look well." And my brother didn't say anything because he was the reader, and he was like, we don't mess with the mass, right? And I ended up puking into my hands because I didn't want to puke on the altar. And I ended up leaving the altar and going outside and finishing the evacuation. And my brother goes to the priest, who's now sitting in silence after his sermon, and he whispers to the priest. He says, "John just threw up." And the priest says, "Where?" And my brother says, "In his hands." And the priest says, "Good." Right. And I often say that God showed up that day. Mm-hmm. God showed up when that woman got up from the congregation and said, "That young boy doesn't look well," because that was the loving thing to do.
Yes.
My brother and the priest did the religious thing.
Yes.
And that was the difference that day for me.
That's a big difference. Did you do what you're supposed to do according to the church mass rules, or did you do what was right and loving? No. And if the rules matter more than the person, there's something wrong.
Absolutely right. I completely agree with you. Well, we have actually filled out a whole half hour here.
Look at that. Look at us just yabbering on about.
We have that ability. That's one of our superpowers.
We can talk and talk and talk. So let us know what you want us to talk about next, listeners.
Right.
As we just love to chat and explore and adventure down these roads of spirituality.
So you want to take us out, young lady?
Sure. So we thank you, as always, for being a part of Spirit Cafe. We'd probably still do this without you, but it's more fun with you. We don't
probably true. That's probably true. It's the best laughs of the week is hanging out with Tamara and John.
So thank you. And comment. Let us hear your thoughts. What do you feel about spirituality versus religion? We would love to read your thoughts, hear your thoughts, make us a video, send it to us.
Well, that would be awesome.
Wouldn't it be cool?
I tell you what, let me just say this. If you guys really have a story that you'd like us to talk about or share or something like that, go ahead and make that video. We will get it on the YouTube channel. We'll put it up there. We'll create a little segment in our show for your video, and we will make it happen.
You will. That's awesome, because we love the conversation and you're included in that. So be sure to come back next week. We have no idea what we're talking about, but we'll know by then.
There you go. There you go. All right. Have a great day. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.